After watching that, I know 100% I will need an epidural, but I give it to you because that was amazing.
Welcome back to the first Hustled and Brunch podcast and the very first episode of 2023. I'm so excited because this is a really special episode. I'm also joined by a special person, which I'll get into in just a little bit. But yeah, so my February baby decided to make an early appearance right after the start of the new year. So this episode is my official birth story. I'm excited to share this with you for a couple of reasons. First, I watched and listened to so many different birth stories when I was pregnant. I found it helpful to hear about other people's perspectives and their experiences, so I definitely wanted to repay the favor and do the same. But probably more importantly, I want to remember this forever. So, what better way to preserve the memory than by recording what all went down so that I can share it with my daughter one day? So, let's get into it. Like I said, I brought on a special guest today to join me. It's my sister, Jemiah. So, hey, Jemiah,
Hi.
welcome.
Hey. I'm so
Hello.
excited.
Finally on the podcast.
Yes.
She was in the room with me when I gave birth and documented the whole thing for us so that we could focus on bringing the baby into the world, which I definitely recommend if you're able to bring in more than one person. I know with COVID times, sometimes they're limiting how many people can be in the room with you. For me, I could have two. So I had my partner, obviously, and then brought my sister. So he obviously was focusing on me and the baby, and she was able to kind of see big picture, what's all going on, and document photos, got audio clips of everything that took place. And I brought her on because honestly, as you'll learn, I pretty much blacked out at one point and I don't remember a few of the things that happened. So without further ado, welcome to the podcast and let's go ahead and get into it. A couple weeks ago, I announced that I had had my baby on Instagram on my stories, and I shared that it was an unmedicated birth and asked if you all had any questions that I could answer on a podcast. So Jemiah is going to go over some of those questions that you asked. A lot of them were pretty similar, basically having to do with preparation. So how I prepped and how long I prepped and that sort of thing. So yeah, I'll pass it off to our host for today, Jemiah.
Okay, perfect. So, our first question today is why did you want to have an unmedicated birth experience?
Yeah, this is a good question. And there were actually a few different reasons. So, first, giving birth is scary, but giving birth as a Black woman in America is even scarier. And I wanted to
Mhm.
avoid any unnecessary interventions that could potentially lead to me literally dying, which sounds very dramatic to say, but sadly, I feel like, you know, this is our reality and something we have to think about. I did want to throw in a couple of statistics here. According to the CDC, Black women die in the perinatal period, so during pregnancy and the year following pregnancy, at 3 to 4 times the rate of white and Hispanic women. On top of that, the U.S. maternal mortality rate in general peaked during the pandemic and was highest for Black women, while maternal mortality rates decreased in other countries. So it's just really sad to see. So, first of all, maternal mortality rates were already bad for Black women, and then the pandemic made things even worse. So, having a baby semi still in the pandemic towards the end of it, that was something that was really important for me to be mindful of. And it's sad because, like, I just read an article this week about a Black woman who was killed while getting an epidural, and it's like you shouldn't have to think about this as being a potential like situation that happens when you go to the hospital to give birth to your child. But she
Right.
wanted an epidural. She was located in a predominantly Black community in Brooklyn, I believe, and the doctor actually had a history of injuring patients with epidurals. Like, why is he still practicing? I have no idea. But they
Right.
allowed him to do this, and he ended up killing her because he placed it incorrectly. So, yeah, it's a very real concern and very current because the stuff is happening every day. There's documentaries out there about it, and I feel like people are becoming more and more aware of it, but it's definitely more at the forefront of it was for my mind, and I'm sure for other Black women. One of the other reasons why I went into it preparing for it to be an unmedicated birth was that I had had a spinal fusion several years ago. If you've been following me for a while, you probably know that. But yeah, so I had the spinal fusion when I was younger. They told me then, like, you may not be able to get an epidural just because of the way the bones have been fused and whatever. And when I was younger, I was just like, okay, cool. Like, I'll deal with that when I get there. Not really thinking about it. It's been over 10 years, I think, since the surgery. And now I had to think about it. So I wasn't sure if an epidural would even be an option for me. And my other option would be IV drugs. And I didn't really want that either. So I just planned on going into it unmedicated. And if I have to and need to and can get an epidural, then great. But I was hoping that I wouldn't have to.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last reason was I spoke to a ton of friends that had had babies. And of my friends that had had an unmedicated birth, they seem to have really great deliveries and overall birth experiences and a relatively easy, in quotes, like nothing is easy, but relatively easy recovery. So I figured, I don't know what these people are doing. There's something they're doing right. I don't know how they were up, like moving around right after they gave birth. And in the days and weeks right after delivery, I would see them like going on walks around their neighborhood and, pretty much back to normal, honestly. And
Right.
so, not that bouncing back very quickly is the goal. Of course, everyone talks about that, but like, I think it's really important, especially now going through it, getting as close as possible to your normal and like feeling like yourself is really important during this postpartum period. And it was super important for me to be able to do that. And yeah, after hearing their stories, I was like, okay, you guys did something right. So I'm going to give this a try too.
Right. Yeah. So how long would you say it took for you to prepare for an unmedicated birth?
This one came up a lot. And I would say that I started preparing immediately. So if you think about that, then it took me like 8 months to prepare. I think something to keep in mind if you're planning to have an unmedicated birth is that it's going to require physical, mental, and emotional preparation. So there's a lot that goes into it and it takes time, and that's totally fine. That's why we have 9 months or so to give birth. Plenty of time for preparation.
Mm-hmm.
So, one of the first things I did when I was first found out I was pregnant was to put together a birth team that would support my wishes to have an unmedicated birth because I pretty much knew that I wanted to do that from the beginning. And in addition to that, as I mentioned earlier, I'm always thinking about my outcomes as a Black woman. So, implicit racial bias can impact every patient provider interaction. And it was important for me that I felt comfortable with everyone that I interacted with and that I felt like they were listening to my needs and very responsive to my concerns and address them immediately. Sadly, that's another issue that Black women face during pregnancy and in delivery and all of that postpartum. They voice concerns and their providers either don't do anything or they don't react fast enough, and then it leads to poor outcomes. So I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to at least do what I could to help prevent that.
Right.
So I essentially interviewed providers at 3 different practices, and I was pretty sure I wanted to use a midwife, but initially my partner, family, everyone was a little concerned with that. I guess it's not as common for people to use midwives these days, and so they were just a little concerned. And so I also saw a couple of OBs just to be sure that that's the route that I wanted to go. And after I went to the midwife practice, I knew 100% that that's like where I wanted to go immediately. They just spent so much time getting to know me personally, finding out about my experience so far, and just answering all of the questions I have. Usually I go in there with my notes app filled with questions, and they don't try to rush me at all. That's one complaint I always hear about OBs is like they get you in and out. You wait in the lobby for like an hour and then you're in and out in 2 minutes because they don't really listen to you. That's not how it
Right.
was at this practice at all. So yeah, it kind of felt like a family, like they actually cared about me. So yeah, I was
That's
like,
important.
you guys are definitely going to be delivering my baby. So I'm going with you. So after that initial visit, I kind of did some more research on the benefits of using a midwife and how safe it is and how they're also overseen by other OBs if, you have a serious issue that requires their assistance later on in your pregnancy. And I shared this research and information with my partner. He was 100% on board, which was helpful because I had his support. And yeah, I decided to go ahead and move forward. After choosing to go with the midwives, I then started researching doulas in my area. That was something else that I had learned, too often Black women aren't taken seriously by the healthcare system. And these midwives and doulas kind of have been bridging the gap for Black women. So I knew that I wanted to have a doula as part of my birth team in addition to the midwife, especially because I have my own experiences of when I was in pain and had concerns that were ignored, and then they turned out to be very serious. So
Mm-hmm.
I knew I needed an advocate who was very knowledgeable about childbirth, especially in a hospital setting where this was my first child and I didn't know what to expect. And she was super equipped to be able to support me through labor and delivery. For those who don't know, a doula offers emotional support, physical support, and informational support throughout pregnancy and postpartum. There are doulas and postpartum doulas that have different roles, and I won't get into it all here, but obviously, birth doulas support you during childbirth and preparation beforehand. And I'll share some stuff that mine did while I was in labor later on. And then we have postpartum doulas who could be the same person, but they also help you after you get home. So they could help with feeding your baby at night or help with some light housework or provide some lactation services if they have experience with that to help you out with breastfeeding at the very beginning. After my experience, I highly recommend hiring a doula if it's feasible for you. Unfortunately, it's not something that's covered by insurance, but it can make a huge difference in your birthing experience. Plus, they also support your partner, which is really important to me because it was both of our first baby and we had no clue what to expect, like I said. So he was included in all of our prep meetings and had his questions answered. And I felt like that was important for him to be a part of it too, because pregnancy is obviously very isolating. Like you're going through it yourself, but you need people who understand kind of what you're going through at the same time. So that was
Right.
one way for him to kind of get more experience, I guess, with what was going on and what he could expect to happen as we got closer and closer to delivery. And while I was completely out of it during labor, she would also guide him on the different things that he could do to help me. So without her, I don't think we would have had as positive of an experience just because things got intense, as you know, and neither one of us would have
Yes.
known what to do. So, how I found my doula, I joined a local moms group and I found several recommendations in there. I contacted a couple of them that were recommended in the group and set up interviews to kind of get a feel for their personality and their experience. And I think it's important to do that because, and not just like look at a website and sign up with somebody, because this person is someone that you're going to interact with a lot during your pregnancy. And like I said, postpartum, but also they're going to provide support for you in the labor and delivery room. So you want to make sure that you're very comfortable with this person. And I clicked with my doula right away. She honestly seemed like a family member. We got on a Zoom call and I don't know, it felt like I knew her my whole life. So
Yeah.
it made me
She's
feel a
sweet.
lot better. Yeah, she's really sweet. And I was really impressed by her experience and her overall approach to pregnancy and childbirth. And like, this doesn't have to be a scary thing. This is something that women's bodies were made to do. And also, she's a Black woman, also made me feel very comfortable. And she had given birth to triplets vaginally and unmedicated. So I was like, oh, you
Wow.
are superwoman and you clearly know what you're doing. So sign me up. Because
Yeah.
especially with multiples, they usually try to force you into having a C-section. And she was like, nah, not about that. So I
Wow, that's
really
so crazy.
admired
I did
her.
not know that.
Yeah, triplets. Like I could not
Yeah,
imagine doing this
wow.
3 times back to back. Like, no, thank you.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. So once I had my official birth team finalized, then I found a Webster certified chiropractor who works with pregnant women and children. This was important because, of course, I had a spinal fusion years ago. So I had experience with back pain and that sort of thing. And I wanted to avoid that as much as possible or help relieve some of that back pain that came along with pregnancy. But I also had learned that it's important to make sure your body is in alignment so that you have a smoother delivery. And I initially saw them twice a week, and then we dropped down to once a week starting in my second trimester. But yeah, I saw them pretty much second and third trimester throughout the rest of my pregnancy. And then during my second trimester, I also began experiencing pelvic pain that got worse as the weeks went on, unfortunately. And eventually it got so bad that I could barely walk, put pants on, or even turn over in bed without being in like excruciating pain. And so I was end up being diagnosed with symphysis pubis dysfunction, or SPD, which is basically when the joint between your right and left pelvis softens too soon before childbirth and it moves more than usual. Basically, it's like in preparation for childbirth, but it started happening too early. So by the end of my pregnancy, it felt like I could literally feel it coming apart to make way for the baby, which was a crazy sensation.
Mm.
And anyways, my midwife, somewhere along in my second trimester, I can't remember which week, she recommended physical therapy. So I got a referral, and they helped a lot with doing different exercises and techniques to kind of relieve that pain. But the only way to actually cure it is to deliver your baby. So yeah, if you experience any pain like that, I would also recommend looking into PT, speak to your OB or your midwife and find out what they recommend. But aside from like a belly band or pelvic support band, that was the next step, because I had been doing that for several weeks and it just wasn't helping as much as it could have. So yeah, that was a lot, but I think choosing the right providers played a big part in prepping for my unmedicated delivery, just because I had a really supportive team and a lot of people preparing my body also to be able to do this.
Right. So how would you say that you prepared your body?
Before I ever thought seriously about getting pregnant, I told myself whenever I did, I would keep working out. I loved weightlifting and like did that several times a week. I said I would keep working out, eat healthy, and do all the things to make sure that I was in my like best shape possible before I got pregnant and throughout my entire pregnancy. I don't know why I had this dream, this fantasy dream that like pregnancy was so not easy, but like I didn't expect it to be as hard as it was. And I was pretty miserable. Obviously, if you've been following me for a while, I basically ghosted social media. Like I was not doing anything for my business because I just did not have the capacity to be able to do that. I was just super fatigued and nauseous for most of it. So, despite all of that, I tried to stay as active as possible throughout my entire pregnancy. It just looked a lot different from what I did pre pregnancy and what I expected to be able to do. And for a while, it drove me crazy because I just felt like, I don't know, I'm the type of person like I want to do what I want to do. And I wanted to exercise and hit the gym, and I just could not. I
Hmm.
didn't have the energy to, I didn't have the strength to, because I just felt so weak after being sick, and it was just not fun. Then I remembered that I needed to give myself grace, considering I was experiencing all of these painful symptoms, the pelvic pain. I really couldn't do anything after that throughout my pregnancy. And, I was doing the best I could. I walked for at least 30 minutes each day, usually more, especially when it was warmer and earlier in my pregnancy when I could take my dog on longer walks. I also still tried to exercise 2 to 3 times a week most weeks, but instead of weightlifting, it mainly looked like stretches or prenatal yoga. And it was like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, as opposed to like an hour workout. That was pretty intense. And
Hmm.
then before my pelvic pain started, I did a lot of squat variations. I also used videos on YouTube, so you can search prenatal workouts and whatever trimester you're in to find workouts that are best for that time period of what your body is capable of doing. And then towards the end of my pregnancy, I discovered Emily Sky Fit. And I wish I had discovered her earlier, but she has a pregnancy program, and it was closer to what I was used to because it involved some hand weights, but nothing too intense. But I kind of felt back to not normal, but like sort of back into my normal routine when I started doing those workouts. She also has different levels depending on your activity and experience level. And she has a postpartum program, so I'll be able to start that in a couple of weeks, which is really nice. So then on top of that, as I mentioned earlier, I started physical therapy. And in physical therapy, we did a lot of pelvic floor exercises because, again, I was experiencing pelvic pain. So we did Kegels, hip circles on the exercise ball, happy baby. You can look these up if you don't know what they are, clamshells, and things like that. There's also SPD workouts on YouTube if you experience that pain as well. And then another thing that I did that wasn't like an exercise, but it physically prepared my body, was I replaced my desk chair with an exercise ball. And honestly, it was way more comfortable than I expected it to be. So I would work 8 hours a day or longer, and I would sit at my desk on that ball. And it was good to support, my back, my pelvis, my core, and all of that without really thinking about it. So I think that also contributed to me, being prepared physically.
Yeah, that's so crazy. I mean, I know that this didn't just happen overnight that you thought this. I know it took a lot of mental and emotional preparation. So, what was that like?
Yeah, honestly, that's probably the most important. The physical, it's important, but at some point, like that baby's coming out regardless of what you did, and your body actually knows what to do to get that baby out, which we'll talk about later. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think the mental part is the most important. So I'm the type of person that wants to know everything that I can expect, like the good, the bad. I want to know it all. Not because I'm scared or anxious, but because I feel like the more educated you are about something, the less scary it seems and the more prepared you can be. So, even down to like getting a tour of the labor and delivery room at the hospital, like I took a tour of the hospital, found out everything that they would be giving us, like that they would be providing, so that I knew what to pack in my hospital bag, what I didn't need to pack in my hospital bag, that sort of thing. And just like knowing what the room looked like and kind of the things that I would have available. For example, the exercise ball, peanut ball, like knowing that was all there. I didn't have to worry about it. And it just made me feel more comfortable going into it and just helped me
Hmm.
feel more prepared and less anxious about doing a hospital birth. And then, like I said, I watched a ton of birth stories on YouTube, listened to podcasts, and followed some educational accounts on social media. A couple of them that I recommend are at Horton Lane _ at Built to Birth and at By Design Birth Doula. They were all super helpful, just like letting you know kind of what you can expect and what breathing techniques you can use, or what, a lot of people ask about preparation. So, what things you can do to prepare for an unmedicated childbirth. I learned a lot from them. I also read a bunch of books, and I'd say that the one that helped the most with preparing for an unmedicated birth specifically was Natural Childbirth, the Bradley Way. And I linked to it and several other books that I read in my Amazon storefront. If you go to firsthustlethenbrunch.com/links, you'll see it. But that book was super helpful at explaining exactly what happens during each phase of labor and delivery, basically. And by the end of it, I really felt confident that I could do that. And I also liked that they included tips for your partner in there of what they can expect and what they can do during each stage. So, highly recommend that book. And then one other thing to keep in mind is that I only watched and listened to positive birth stories. So some of them were medicated and most of them were unmedicated deliveries. But by only listening to positive experiences while being aware that things don't always go according to plan, and even those positive birth stories, they had situations where, they ended up doing a C-section or something else happened that they weren't expecting. I basically tricked my brain into thinking that it was the only option was to have a positive outcome regardless. So anytime people wanted to share their traumatic story, either of themselves or a friend or somebody they heard or read about, saw, I just said, no thanks, and skip past that video if I was online. Otherwise, I think it would have caused a lot of anxiety and doubt. And also, I don't know, I just did not need that negativity in my life as I was preparing.
Such a you thing.
I know, it really is. I'm just like, skirt, bye.
Yeah, I love that.
The other thing that I did was learn how to breathe. And I don't think I realized how important this was until I was
Hmm.
in it. But let me tell you, it is very important to learn how to breathe. And I practiced different techniques that I found on YouTube. There's someone named Bridget Taylor. I think that's how you say her name. It's Teyler if you look her up. And the one that I liked best was you breathe in for 4, out for 6. And I started practicing this probably a month before I ended up delivering. With every Braxton Hicks contractions, I ended up having really bad Braxton Hicks. They were so painful. And so a lot of times I needed to breathe through them. And so I used that technique to kind of practice. And that way, when the time came for actual contractions during labor, that it would kind of come naturally. And that's exactly what happened. So that was a good strategy to use. There were also affirmations that I memorized to help me get through labor. I know this is one of the questions was like, what did you say to yourself to like get through the contractions? And at one point you just all these go out the window because you cannot focus on these affirmations. But a couple of the ones that stuck with me where my body was made for this and each contraction is getting me one step closer to meeting my baby. Those two were pretty motivating for me, and I kept those in mind throughout my labor and delivery. My doula also said positive affirmations to me during labor and throughout that experience. So I definitely recommend having a support person do it for you because, like I said, there's going to come a point where you can't do anything besides breathe. And like you're going through so much pain, you're not thinking about affirmations.
Hmm.
So have somebody else doing them for you.
I love that. I'm about to cry reading those affirmations, just thinking about
Oh my
everything.
gosh.
So
You're
sweet.
so funny. Yeah. So as I got close to my due date, I felt pretty confident in my ability to do this based on everything that I had done physically to prep, mentally, emotionally, all this stuff. I also had a good understanding of what to expect during all the stages of labor and the different interventions and outcomes that I could experience. So I stopped prepping for childbirth and started reading books and other content on like sleep for babies, infant care, and things I would need to know during postpartum. So at some point, definitely stop preparation and just focus on what's going to come afterwards because labor and delivery is this short time frame and then you're going to have this baby for the next 18 years. So a much longer time frame. It's better to start preparing for that, but also like don't psych yourself out and be over prepared or just like I feel like you can fill yourself up with too much information. So at some point you just got to stop. So once you feel confident, let that be the end of it. And then I also mentioned that there were several other things I wanted to try to prepare for birth, but since she came early, she came at 35 weeks. I wasn't able to because the stuff you wouldn't be able to start until 36 to 38 weeks because it can potentially induce labor. So look into red raspberry leaf tea, dates, pineapples, and evening primrose oil and their benefits for childbirth. And like I said, I can't speak to how effective they are because I didn't try them myself, but I've heard that they can speed up labor and make your contractions more productive, which can lead to, shorter labor, less likelihood of tearing, and that sort of thing. And I'll be honest, I was upset because I had even bought the tea and I was told that I couldn't start drinking until 36 weeks. So I was literally like a few days away from starting to drink it. So if you are able to try any of these things, let me know how it goes because I'd love to hear. And then aside from all of those things, I also did something else that I really enjoyed. And this is definitely a personal decision, but I got monthly prenatal massages after my first trimester. So you're not allowed to get a massage. They'll tell you you're not allowed to get one, I think, before 12 weeks. But after that, it's fair game. And prenatal massage has been proven to improve labor outcomes and newborn health. It also helps reduce anxiety, decrease symptoms of depression, relieve muscle aches and joint pains, and 10 out of 10 recommend. I use that as my excuse for getting monthly massages because I've never done that in my entire life. But I felt like I should for my own health and the health of my baby. And it's actually funny. I don't even know if you know this. So, in the days before I went into labor, I felt terrible. I was so exhausted. The nausea came back. Basically, like I felt like I'd been hit by a train, like first trimester symptoms came
Aw.
back. And I was so achy. Everything hurt. Like I said, my pelvic bones, I felt like were just falling apart. And that Friday, I actually went and got a massage that afternoon. I called them and I was like, please, can you get me in? Because I had one booked. That monthly one for January was booked for like a week or two after. And I was like, I'm going to move it up if you can get me in today. And so they were able to get me in that Friday. And then my water broke, which we'll get into the
So
next morning.
crazy.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm talking to my friends or anybody asking about how in the world you had a natural birth, I literally tell them that you knew from day one that's you what you wanted to do and you stuck with it through the
Yeah.
whole thing. So crazy. I thought that you would have changed your mind, but we'll get into that.
I know.
So go
I
ahead and
honestly
tell
think a lot of
us.
people thought I was going to change my mind because I had been
Yeah,
saying this from the very beginning. I was like, no, I'm not going to do an epidural. And this was even before I had done all the preparation, all the physical stuff, and all read all the stuff. I just knew that that's what I wanted to do. So,
yeah. I mean, more power to you. I mean, it's really who you are. Like if you say you're going to do something, you do it. I don't know why I thought you were just going to change your mind. All right, well, let's get into your birth story. Let us know what happened up until I got there, and then I'll take over.
Oh man, I'm scared for when you take over. Okay. So like I said, I went and got a massage that Friday because I felt terrible. I was like laying around the house, my body hurt. I was so tired. And so I went and got a massage and it was great. And I came home and I told my partner, I was like, "Oh yeah, I went and got a massage. I'm feeling a lot better." And that was that. We go to bed. In the middle of the night, I wake up to this gush. That's all I
Yeah,
can
not a gush.
the only way I can describe it. I don't even know what I thought your water breaking would feel like, but that was not it. So
Right,
Saturday morning, 2:30 a.m., my water breaks. And like I said, it just felt like a gush, but I knew it didn't. I knew I hadn't peed on myself because it did not come from that place. You catch what I'm
hmm,
saying? It came from somewhere
yeah,
else.
right,
So I immediately get out of bed, go to the bathroom. I check myself. I'm like trying to clean up because it was a lot of liquid, which
right,
also was something I did not expect. I thought it was going to be like a little trickle or like it happens, the big gush happens and then it stops. Like that's it. No, if your water breaks, you continue losing water until it's your amniotic fluid technically, but you keep losing it until you give birth. So it just kept coming out. Did you know that?
oh wow, no.
Yeah.
I
So I
remember they
got
kept asking you, and I was like, why are we still talking about this?
yes, because it kept going out and it was a lot of fluid. I was not ready.
Wow.
Yeah. So I go to the bathroom, I get cleaned up. Luckily, I had already bought all of my postpartum materials. So I had some adult diapers in the bathroom. I grabbed those, put one of them on. Everyone was making fun of me for these adult diapers when I bought them, but let me tell you, I love them. They did not leak at all. I had no issues and like yeah, it was great. So anyways, I put this on and then I go out to the bedroom and I tell my partner, I'm like, um, I'm pretty sure my water just broke. Just like casually said it, like, sorry, I don't want to alarm you. You were in the middle of sleeping, real good, I'm sure. But my
Yeah.
water just broke. Next thing I know, he's like jumped up. I didn't even know this because I decided to go call my mom and call my doula, but I'll get into that. So I'm on the phone with mom. Just wanted to know like how soon after her water broke did she go, like did she have us? Because I wanted to know how much time did I have. Because I
Right.
wasn't really having contractions. Like I said, I had Braxton Hicks contractions for the past probably month and a half, maybe before this, that were really painful. Some of them were really, really bad where I had to breathe through them. It was nothing like that. Like I just felt normal. My water just had
Right.
broken. So I was like, how soon is it about to get real? And my mom's like, oh, it's probably going to happen like within the next few hours. Like, you want to get ready. So then I call the doula and I'm like, hey, my water just broke. Very early, 5 weeks early. But yeah, it just happened. And she was actually supposed to come over to our house that Saturday to go over some comfort measures and labor techniques and that sort of thing because you know this, I had a feeling that the baby was going to come in January my entire
Hmm.
pregnancy. Like I've been saying
Right.
that the
Yeah.
entire time. She's coming early. So I wanted her to come and go over these techniques with us. And it was like the first Saturday of the month or something, maybe one of the first Saturdays of the month. So she was coming over to help us with that. And so I just let her know ahead of time, like, hey, I'm actually might be going into labor. Like my water just broke. And she told me, my plan was originally to labor at home as long as possible. She was like, lay back down, see if you can get some rest. And we'll talk in a couple of hours, see if those contractions start, and then let me know.
Hmm.
While I'm on the phone with him, I look up. He's run out of the room with my hospital bag, which I had just finished packing literally that day, like Friday. He put the hospital bag in the car. He put the car seat in the car. The base and everything was already set up, but the car seat was in the car. He had his shoes on. He was dressed. He was ready to go. I'm still sitting there in my pajamas and my diaper, like, what's happening? So I
Love
let him know, I'm
that.
like, we're not going anywhere. Let's just get back in bed for now. Later on, after a couple of hours, no, I got absolutely no sleep while I was laying there. I decided to call my midwife. They have like an on call number. So I called them and I let them know that I was pretty sure my water broke. And I knew for sure because it kept leaking, like I said. So I'd already switched probably to another diaper by then. And they were like, if your water did break, you need to go ahead and come in because there's a protocol we need to do because your baby's early. We need to give you antibiotics because now that your water broke, you're susceptible to an infection. And then we need steroids because your baby's like lungs, brain, organs need more time to develop. So we're going to have to speed that up if she's coming like in the next couple of days. So I was like, okay, so I have to actually go to the hospital now, which I really did want to avoid it as long as possible,
Right.
just because I heard that being in the hospital again can lead to other interventions that you don't want. And so I was trying to labor at home as long as possible. But again, I still wasn't even having contractions really. Like they're kind of, I was feeling kind of crampy, but nothing crazy. So 8 a.m., we arrive at the hospital. I get put in like a triage area to be examined, and they see that I'm only about 1 to 2 centimeters dilated then. And my contractions again weren't very strong. They could see them on the monitor, but I wasn't really feeling them, and they were pretty inconsistent. But they did test and say that they had confirmed my water did break. They tested it 3 different times, 3 different types of tests, I'm pretty sure. But they were able to confirm that my water did break. So therefore, I was admitted to be able to receive the IV antibiotics and the steroid and all that stuff to speed up her development since she was coming early. And it was a really exciting time. It was completely unexpected, obviously. Like, I knew she was coming in January. I had that gut feeling, but I really thought I had a couple more weeks to prepare. And so when I discovered, like, no, she's coming like today or tomorrow at the most, that was just a
Hmm.
crazy feeling. Like, it got real. So call my doula again, let her know we were at the hospital and, what was going on. I kept her updated throughout the whole time I was there. And like I said, she was supposed to come over to our house that afternoon to go over some comfort measures and labor techniques and exercises and stuff with us. So she actually came to the hospital and did all of that for us. Luckily, we had everything that we needed in the hospital. So the yoga ball, they had a peanut ball, a couple of other like tools that we could use to, once my labor and the contraction started. She also brought a TENS unit, which I'll get into all this stuff later on. But yeah, so she came over and helped us kind of prep for when things got more intense. And then they mentioned to us that if things didn't progress within the next 12 to 24 hours, they would induce me because with my water breaking, they needed to make sure that she was born so that she was not at risk of developing an infection or anything like that. And I told them that I wanted to avoid that if at all possible. Like, I knew that inductions, especially with Pitocin, that's what they wanted to use. I knew that it would make things more intense for me and that a lot of people can't give birth with Pitocin without an epidural. And I really didn't want the epidural.
Hmm.
So 12 hours after my water broke, they came to check me and they told me, okay, we're going to hold off again and see what your body does. And I was like, oh, thank God. Like, I got another 12 hours to figure out, like, to somehow get my body to go into more active labor. So there's different stages. There's like early labor, active labor, transitioning. That's a whole thing
Hmm.
you should read about and learn about each phase of pregnancy and labor and delivery. Um, so yeah, so I wasn't in active labor yet. Then 11 p.m. that night, my contractions started picking up. So I could see them on the monitor. They were getting closer together, but still not very consistent. Some of them were strong, some of them really weren't. And then later on that morning, which is still the middle of the night, like it's overnight, I go to the bathroom and I see some spotting. So there's something called your bloody show, which is a sign of labor. And I was pretty sure that that meant that I was in labor, but the OB came in to examine me and confirm that that's what was actually happening. So she came in, examined me, confirmed I was in active labor, and then I had to switch to a liquid diet. So basically, I only had smoothies and water.
Yeah.
And we were just going to let my body kind of do its thing. Then around 2 p.m., I think, they had been doing blood work and checking me regularly since I entered, since if my water had broken, I might be susceptible for an infection. And so they had been checking my white blood cell count and it continued to increase since I got there. And so they were worried that I had an infection and that it could transfer over to the baby. And because of that, they wanted to get her out as quickly as possible. So after they told me that, I was like, okay, no doubt about it. Like, I'll take that Pitocin. I don't want anything to happen to her. So, of course, I'll do it. But, like, let's start slow. So, Pitocin, there are apparently 30 levels to it. So, we started at 1, and I made it to 6 out of 30. And I think they increased it every 15 to 20 minutes or something like that. They went up a level.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it went 1, 2, then they went up to 4, and then they went up to 6 in that amount of time. And things got super intense after that.
Mm.
Yeah. So I had told them that I wanted them to bring in nitrous oxide, which is laughing gas. I wanted them to bring that into the room so that I'd have it available once things started progressing. I could kind of see how I liked it and if I wanted to continue using it while I was in labor. And I'm glad I did. That was one of the only things I had. And then the TENS unit. But yeah, I'll stop there and let you jump in and kind of go into what happened once you arrived. Because it was actually funny. So,
Okay.
of course, like I said, I had called our mom at like 2:30 in the morning, letting her know my water had broken. And the whole family packed up, loaded up the cars, and they came to visit, which they live a few hours away. And they made it to the hospital basically at the same time we did, which was so funny.
Yeah, we got in those cars and was gone. But it's so funny that you say that all this happened at 2 o'clock because it was literally like 2:15. You were in pain,
Yeah.
so that must have been
It happened quick. I was like, dang, that Pitocin, it works. Let me just tell you.
yeah. That's so
Because
crazy.
I had been
Yeah.
stuck also. That was the other thing. I had been stuck at 2 centimeters dilated for like
Hmm.
over 12 hours. So things
Yeah.
weren't progressing. But let me tell you, as soon as they gave me Pitocin, it got real.
Yeah. At like 2:15, I could tell that you were in pain. You and your doula, y'all were doing exercises. Um, at this point, you were doing exercises out of the bed. So you were rolling around on your ball. I don't even remember what the exercise was called, but I remember your partner kept being like, "You look like Captain Morgan." You had to like step up on the blocks and get back off.
Oh, yeah.
It
I
was
forgot
really
about that.
cute. Yeah, but you were like still in high spirits. You felt good. You were rolling around on your ball, doing it all. But then
Yeah,
it
I
was
was
like,
doing some of the techniques that she had me doing on the ball that I remember earlier on. They were like hula hoops, so basically just like hip circles, I guess, on the
mm-hmm.
ball, and pelvic tilts, which is when you move forward and backwards. And then yeah, the one where I put my foot up, I'm not sure what that one was, but yeah,
Yeah, it
felt
was
good in the
cute.
moment.
Yeah. But yeah, you were feeling good. And I know at some points I felt like you were just on that laughing gas because you would just bust out laughing and then you would just immediately go back to breathing. We were like, okay, she's feeling it.
Yeah, at the beginning, I think I was using the laughing gas occasionally, like if it seemed like it was going to be really bad. I also wanted to like learn how to use it. So the other thing is with that, you have to be the one to administer it to yourself, so nobody else can touch the mask besides you. And then you have to make sure that you're breathing it in correctly in order for you to like feel anything. So I think part of it was me just like practicing. So sometimes I wanted to use it, and other times I was like, nah, I can just breathe through this contraction. I don't need it. But one
Yeah.
thing to note is that it doesn't take the pain away. So it's not like an epidural, it's not like pain meds where you won't feel the pain. You still feel it. It just gives you something to distract you. That's the best way I can describe it, is like I was focusing on breathing in this thing. And then also, depending on how much you inhale, yes, it can make you feel a little buzzed.
Yes, we definitely saw that. So then around like 3 o'clock, y'all started doing more exercises. You could definitely see on the screen that your contractions were getting a little bit more intense. Could definitely tell that you were feeling it because you were not talking at all. And it was like if anybody said anything to you, you did not want to hear it. We had made it to that stage that it was clear you did not want to hear what anyone had to say.
Oh my gosh. That's probably the point where I'm just like, I don't remember anything here because I was so focused on what was happening in my body.
Yeah, and you kept asking your doula, you were like, how much longer is this going to take? Like, I don't want to do this anymore. And you started doing your exercises in the bed, which is when her and your partner started working together. I definitely could tell that the pain was getting up there. And then you kept saying, how much longer? How much longer? And she was like, babe, we haven't even got there yet. Like, it's going to get worse. And you were like, oh my God, it's going to get worse.
Yeah, I was not ready. It was actually
Yeah.
funny too. This is one thing I remember from earlier. They were like, "Okay, what are your contractions at right now on a scale of like 1 to 10?" And I think I said they were like a 7 or something like that.
Yeah.
And they were like, "This is a 7? Oh, it's going to get worse." I was like, "We need to do something to this scale then because this is getting pretty intense."
Yeah. Yeah, they did ask that. So then around like 3:45, you got in the shower and you were doing exercises on your ball in the shower. Then you were saying you were a little bit nauseous, so you got a little bit sick. So they were like, okay, maybe take a break from the laughing gas, don't inhale so much. We tried to
Yeah,
turn on
I
some
actually do
music.
remember getting in the shower. So that was something that I definitely wanted to do as part of my birth plan overall. Is like, I knew it could be pain relieving, but as soon as I got in there, I was like, oh no, this is like way too intense. The other reason I think it got way more intense when I got in the shower is because I was using, so aside from the laughing gas, I was using the TENS unit that my doula brought. So the TENS unit, in case you haven't heard of it, it stands for transcutaneous electrical nerve stimulation. Basically, it just sends these like little signals to your nerves that, I don't know, they basically like block the pain signals in your spinal cord area. So that's how they help reduce the pain. And I guess it helped a lot because I had to take that off while I was in the shower because obviously don't want to get electrocuted. And that is when I really felt it and I was like, I cannot do this any longer. She gave me the shower head and I was basically spraying it where I was feeling the pain. So everywhere. I was
Yeah, you
spraying
were
it
in
on
there
my
for about
stomach.
5 minutes and you were like, take me
It didn't,
out.
yeah, it didn't take long at all. I just was like, this is too intense and this water is not doing anything.
That's funny. Yeah, you immediately got out, dried off, and got right back in that bed.
Which is funny because I don't even remember like getting out. Like what I
Yeah.
remember, let me just tell you what I remember. I remember going in the shower. She put my exercise ball in the shower, so I was sitting on it, spraying myself. I told her like this is too much. I can't do it. I need, epidural. I need morphine. I need something else because this is not it. And then I basically blacked out. So I don't remember anything until I was literally pushing her out.
Oh my
So
gosh,
now you
girl,
can
so much
fill me in.
happened.
Yeah, like you can fill us in on from that moment till she was delivered because that's all I
Oh my
remember.
gosh. Okay, so yeah, after you were in the shower, you started getting sick while you were still in the bathroom.
Mm.
So that was all a thing. They were trying to get you cleaned up, get you back in the bed, dried off, everything. And they had to get you completely dried off because you had the TENS unit on. So they didn't want you to get electrocuted. So that was
Who was
interesting.
drying me off?
Your doula.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, she was with you the whole time. And then around like 3:58, your midwife comes in and she's like, "Oh, she was in the shower, like that's cool." But she comes and she's like, "We should probably check you to see because you were like, I am in so much pain." So she said, "Let's check just to see if you've opened up anymore." And at this point, you were 7 centimeters. And I was like, "Yes, we are in here. We're so close."
Yeah, which is good because that was only like what an hour later or something like that, and
Yeah,
I had been stuck at 2 centimeters for over 12 hours.
yeah. But also at this point, it was like 10 out of 10 pain. You were not saying anything, like you were just rolling around, and I just knew you were uncomfortable. I felt so
In the
bad.
bed. I was rolling in the
Yes,
bed. Yeah.
yes, just side to side. We were fanning you, we were playing music, but it was like nobody wanted to say anything because it seemed it was very tense. Nobody wanted to make you mad. Then around 4 o'clock, and then around 4 o'clock, you started asking for the epidural, knowing good and well you couldn't have the epidural. You wanted the epidural. The the nurses were so sweet to you, but she told you that the anesthesiologist was in a surgery and you got so mad. You were like, "He needs to come right now. I am in so much pain." And we are like, "Girl, he's in a whole
Oh.
surgery." So then he comes in and he's like, "I see that she has some metal in her back. I need to know about that." So I was trying to tell him about your spinal fusion, but he needed to see a current x-ray so he could see how far your rods went down so he would know where to place it. So I was like in my phone scrambling on all your social media on YouTube trying to find your x-rays. And then
Which
by
is
that
crazy
time,
because speaking of, so my midwife, they knew about this surgery since my very first visit. And I had had my records sent over from my last like whatever hospital took x-rays the last time. I had had them send the records over to my midwife practice, and then they were supposed to give them to um, the anesthesiologist at the hospital, because it's all one practice basically. Like, they should have been able to see the records, long story short, because
Right.
they were in my account. So I can't even believe that you had to go and like find the records or find the
My God, my
x-rays.
heart was
I'm like, I
racing.
sent those to them literally in like month 2 of the pregnancy or something, like very early.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's crazy.
crazy.
My heart was racing. I was like shaking because he was literally just staring at me as I was looking for everything. I was like, oh my God, nobody give her anything until we find these pictures. And then your nurse kept looking at the screen and she would look at you and she'd be like, Jazz, you have to stop pushing. And your doula was like, she's not pushing. She's not pushing. You threw your hand up and you like waved no. And we were like, oh. And she just like, I'm looking at the screen like you're literally pushing and you need to stop. At this point, it's like 4:50, 4:55. So it's almost been an hour that you asked before you asked for the epidural. Almost an
Also,
hour.
I do remember my doula being like, "Are you sure you want the epidural? Like, you are so close, blah blah blah." And it's funny that she was there because she knew what I wanted, which was not to get an epidural, but I kept asking for it. So she's like asking me, like, "Are you sure?" Like, we probably should have come up with a code word for me to be like, "Yeah, I'm serious." Because at the same
Yeah.
time in my head, I was like, "No, I don't really want the epidural, but I want this pain to be over." That's like
Right.
what I
I think
really
that's what
want.
we all knew. Yeah.
Yeah, like
We
I
all
think
knew that's
everyone
what
knew
it
that I
was.
didn't want the actual epidural. I just wanted the pain to be over. So I was like, just somebody come check me because I need to know how much longer I have of this.
Yeah. And that's what they said before you get the epidural, they had to do more blood work for you because they were checking your white blood cell count. So that was going to be another 30 minutes. So I was like, at that point, you might as well not even get the epidural because it's already been 20 minutes of us waiting.
Yeah, that's
And
too
the
much.
nurse was like, Jazz, stop pushing, stop pushing. So she lifts up the blanket just a little bit to see if you're pushing. And they said, oh my God, there's her head. I'm going to cry thinking about it. And there
Aw.
was her little head. So then all of a sudden, they're like, I don't even remember what your midwife's name was, but they're like, get her in here. And the room like fills up with everybody in their positions. And I was like, oh man, this is it. We're in here.
Yeah,
Um,
I think this is something to mention too, is who was all in the room. So, like I said, my partner, obviously, and you. So,
yeah.
my sister, and then my doula. That was pretty much the only people that were in the room. I can only have two people in there with me. And then the doula doesn't count because she's kind of under the medical personnel category. So she didn't count. And then, yeah, when I listened to the recording, I was like, how many people were in this room? Because all of a sudden, again, I didn't remember, but all of a sudden it seemed like there was a crowd of people in there.
It really was. It was like 9 of us.
Yeah. So
You
I later
had,
found out it was like the anesthesiologist and the NICU doctors. I don't know who
yeah,
else.
you had two people from the NICU, the midwife. The midwife had a nurse with her, and then your nurse was in there. So it was a lot. It was like 9 people. But it was
Yeah.
great. They all came in, they got in their positions, and they stayed there. It flowed so nice. But yeah, so
I can't believe her
um
head was coming out
yes,
already.
it was the most intense and all you could see was her little hair. It was so crazy. It was amazing. But so she pushed your gown up. We could see her head. So we're all sitting there like get in there. We asked you to start pushing. So the first push, you started crowning and we could really see her whole head. And then the second push, her head was completely out. And so the midwife was like, Jazz, do you want to feel her head? And you still had that mask on from the gas and you just yelled no. And they were like, okay, well, do you want to see her? Because I think they were trying to motivate you to keep pushing. And you were like, no. And you had that last push. I don't even know like what came over you, but
Also,
you
I
had
do
that
remember them
last.
asking me if I wanted to feel her and see her. And I was just like, no, because I was so tired by that point. Like, I was exhausted. And I just, like, I don't even, Like she was saying, stop pushing. I'm like, I don't even think I was pushing. Like it was my body just pushing naturally because I was too
Yeah.
tired to push. Like, and then when they asked me if I wanted to see her, I was like, no, because I just wanted her out of my body because I wanted the
I
pain to stop.
know. And we could tell that you were tired because that last push, when her head was completely out, it was like we were all just sitting there waiting for you to push her out. And it was like you took the longest break. And that's probably why in the recording it sounded like we were all yelling at you because we were like, she's literally right here. Like, if you just push one more time, she's going to be out. But you literally just laid in that bed and, and had that mask on your face. And we were like, girl, let's get it out. Let's go.
Yeah,
But yeah,
I
it
was
was like
about
that
done.
third push. I don't know what came over you, but it was like you gave it everything you had. You screamed and she came out. My gosh, it was so amazing.
I
It was
listened
so
to the recording
crazy.
right before this to get in the zone and just remember some stuff that happened. And I realized I didn't cry at all. I didn't really scream. Like this pain is a pain unlike any other because it doesn't make you do anything but be silent.
Oh
And
yeah, you
then
weren't saying anything.
yeah, like you were just completely silent. You are so focused on what's happening internally. And then this scream that you mentioned wasn't even really a scream. It's more like a moan. And it was
Mm-hmm.
very animalistic. And it was kind of funny because I had heard this on other videos and stuff that I watch of other people's birth stories where they recorded like the actual childbirth and they posted that online. And they did the same thing. And I really thought that they were just doing that like that was a technique for them to deliver the baby. But it was 100% natural. Like I don't know where that came from, but I know that it,
Yeah,
yeah, and I'm thinking
yeah.
about putting it in the podcast. We'll see if I actually insert
You
the
need to.
recording.
That noise I will never get out of my head because it was like this is amazing. Like you literally just pushed your body to the absolute max, and you from that scream you can tell
Yeah.
it was crazy. It was intense. But yeah, and then like there she was. So all that happened so fast.
Yeah. Extremely fast.
That's
I
so
felt it.
crazy.
It
I
was
didn't
fast.
realize.
Yeah, it was only a
Yeah.
couple of hours that I went from 2 centimeters to delivering that baby. And that's pretty much like unheard of to be that fast. And it was all
Yeah.
because I had to be induced. Like, I don't think that would have happened if it had happened naturally without Pitocin. And that's
Yeah.
something that some people have asked, like, would I do this all over again? Like, would I do it naturally? And my answer still is yes. Like, I think that that part was very, like, it was a rewarding experience to see my body be able to go through that and do that. And, like, I feel very
Mhm.
accomplished. The Pitocin made it 10 times worse. Like, the pain was on a whole nother level, but I feel like it wouldn't have been that bad if I didn't have Pitocin. That's just me.
Yeah.
Apparently, like I think I even sent you the article where it was saying Pitocin just makes you have like back to back contractions. Basically, there's no time to rest in between, and that's what makes it really bad too.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Yeah, I definitely give you power because after watching that, I know 100% I will need an epidural, but I give it to you because that was amazing. It was amazing to watch, and it was amazing to see you go through it, and it was amazing to see that you stuck with what you wanted, even when you couldn't even tell them. You could not even talk because you were in so much pain. You were still throwing your hands up, like coherent, hearing everything, and be like, "No, we're not doing it."
yeah.
It was
I
crazy.
think the craziest thing is people said this, and I read this as like your body knows what to do, and you're gonna push, and you're gonna feel your body pushing. And I didn't really know what that was like until it was happening, obviously. And like I think I could have just laid there in the well, she I know for sure it would have happened. Like she would have come out with me just
Oh
laying there not
yeah.
doing anything because my body was pushing, and that's why I did have a moment to relax because my
Yeah.
body was doing it, and I was like, "Oh, finally I can breathe." And honestly, like pushing her out was probably the easiest part of that. Like the
Yeah.
labor leading up to it, that pain was way too intense. But actually pushing her out was not bad because it just came so naturally.
Yeah. I mean, you didn't cry through the whole time. The whole time
Hmm.
you didn't cry. And then after you had her, you just were walking around like it was nothing.
Yeah.
I
I
was
think
like,
that was,
wow.
yeah, that's kind of surprised people, but I just like hopped right up.
Yeah. You wanted a salad.
I did. I don't remember that part,
Yeah.
but I'm also not surprised. I just wanted food because I hadn't been able to eat in a long time.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
so
That is
funny.
funny.
Okay, so let me go back to when she came out. They picked her up, they were cutting her umbilical cord. She went off to get her weights, everything done. And then they came back to press on your stomach to get the placenta out. I did not know that was a thing and it was going to hurt as much as it did. I didn't even have to feel it, but
You
I could
didn't
see
wait,
your
did you
face
know
to
that the
know that it
placenta
hurt.
that I would have to deliver the placenta?
For some reason, I thought it was going to come out at the same time,
Okay. Yeah. Comes out separate.
but it came out easy. It was like one push and it
Mhm.
all came out. I was like, wow,
Yeah.
this is so interesting.
But you said you could tell on my face that that was painful when they were pressing
Yeah,
on my
when they were
stomach.
pressing on your stomach, yes, absolutely. I feel
Yeah.
like that made it look like you wanted to cry instead of the actual childbirth.
Honestly, probably that hurts so bad. And then they did it multiple times while I was in the hospital after that. Like I was in the hospital
Yeah,
at this one, you
every
have to be in
15
there for
minutes.
like 48 hours or something after a vaginal delivery. And so I was there for a couple of days after, and they did this multiple times to me. I think it's called a fundal massage, and it's to like help remove some of the blood and prevent hemorrhaging. And I don't know, I'd be making up stuff if I really gave you a reason for why they do it, but I know I know that it hurt a lot, and I hated every time they came in the room and told me they were about to do that. I like braced myself because it hurt so
Yeah,
bad.
you'd see them open the curtain and you'd be like, oh God, it's been 15 minutes. You're
Yeah,
back.
I'm like, dang, you're coming back to do it again? Please
Yeah,
don't. But
that was intense. But it was great. It was a beautiful process.
yeah, I think the other things to mention, just to reiterate, like what helped while I was actually in labor: breathing 4 in, 6 out. So I mentioned that I was doing that in the mask, which was the nitrous oxide or the laughing gas. I was breathing it in for 4, breathing out for 6, until I was like breathing 1, breathing breathing out 1, because I was basically hyperventilating over the pain. Um, then the TENS unit, which is like that thing that was on my back where it was stimulating the different nerves in my spinal cord, to block out the pain a little bit. That helped a lot. Movement, so being on the exercise ball, peanut ball, all those other positions that my doula was putting me in. Any positions that feel comfortable to you. So like there were times when I would get up and walk, or I'd want to move and like sway my hips. And I think there was even one point I like leaned over the bed.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there was one point where I leaned over the back of the bed because it just felt good. Like I don't even know why. But yeah, so do whatever positions feel comfortable to you, like listen to your body. And if you have recommendations from someone that knows about all these techniques and why they're beneficial, like my doula, definitely listen to them and try those out too, because that helped a lot. And then there's things that your partner can do. So counter pressure. So while I was in some of these positions, they were pressing on my back and my hips, basically pressing against the pain, because the pain was all in the front typically for me. So they were kind of applying that pressure to help. I guess it like tricks your brain. So now you're thinking about pain in different areas. So just putting some pressure somewhere else.
Hmm.
My doula also was giving me massages. I don't know if you noticed this. Like she would be like rubbing my legs or rubbing my back or something else. And
Yeah.
she used essential oils. So you're like smelling that aroma too. That was really helpful. And then she also would ask me yes or no questions when I reached a point where I couldn't really speak anymore. So I remember
Hmm.
when we were like playing music, and it was fine for a while. And then there was one song that for whatever reason got stuck in my head, and it sounded like it was echoing over and over and over. And we have still tried to figure out what song that was.
I have
And I
no
don't even know if
idea.
it was actually played or if it was just in my head. So there was a song that I just could not deal with. And I think at one point she just asked, "Is it the music?" Because I kept being like, that song, like turn it off. And they were like, they would switch the song, I guess. And I
Hmm.
still was hearing this other song echoing in my head. And so she asked me, like, "Is it the music?" And I think, did we end up turning the music off? I don't know what happened.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. So I think that was the only solution while I was like imagining the song playing over and over in my ears, which was not fun.
Yeah.
And then the shower. I think it like I said, I was in a lot of pain at that point. Again, her head was basically coming out while I was sitting out there. So
Yeah.
I think that's one reason why I was in so much pain. But I think the shower still helped. But yeah, I would highly recommend using all of those techniques and seeing if there's any others that you would want to add.
So now that you've been postpartum for a few weeks, do you have any tips?
Yes. Actually, I have tips for like, let's break it down in a couple categories. So, first, for moms, I will say make sure you get your postpartum supplies early. Like I said, I thought that she was going to come in January, but I really didn't know for sure. But I wanted to be prepared. So, I had purchased everything in December. So, I had some adult diapers. I actually had gotten the Freedom Mom labor and delivery and postpartum kit from one of my friends at my baby shower. So I had that kit. I got some tucks and dermaplast, and I had all of that in my bathroom already. And I think it was
Mm-hmm.
helpful to have that already because it wasn't stressful. Like I said, my water broke. I went and grabbed one of those adult diapers. Made it a little less stressful than me trying to figure out, okay, now I gotta like put towels everywhere or find pads. I don't know. It just made it super easy for me. And then I also preferred having my own stuff at home, and I used everything that was in the hospital, like whatever they provided. I used that stuff in the hospital, and then I used my own stuff once I made it home. So, that being said, also pack an empty bag to help you carry all the extra supplies that you'll get from the hospital because they'll give you a ton for yourself. So, I brought home a bunch of ice packs that I could put down there in my adult diaper, and then we also brought diapers and bottles and things like that, supplies for pumping. And yeah, basically a lot of stuff that they give you in the hospital. As soon as they bring it across the threshold of your door, it's yours. Like you've already paid for it through your insurance or whatever. So you might as well take it home with you. So bring an empty bag if you can, or at least leave room in your suitcase. That was some advice that people had given me beforehand. So I had a little room in my suitcase, and we also had an extra bag that we brought. And then if I could go back, I would also pack one preemie outfit, or at least buy a preemie outfit, because my poor little baby, she came early. All I had was newborn and 0 to 3 months because, that's what I expected her to be able to fit in. And she couldn't fit in any of those clothes, which is crazy because newborn outfits, they're already so tiny. Like they look so small
Mm-hmm.
and they were too big for her. So for the first week or so, she didn't have any clothes that fit her. So I would recommend purchasing at least one preemie outfit just in case your baby comes early or is on the smaller side. And then I would say for postpartum specifically, accept help from others. There's going to be a lot that you're going through. Like emotionally, you're kind of recovering from this, I would say, traumatic event. Obviously, everybody has their own experience. It technically is still a traumatic event that you're going through giving birth. So you're recovering from that. You are recovering physically as well. You have a
Mm-hmm.
new baby that you're taking care of. So accept all the help that you can and want to accept from others, but also don't be afraid to say no. A couple of my friends mentioned that they had visitors like immediately and how stressful that was because they just, they're recovering, they're bleeding, their boobs are leaking, they're trying to learn how to breastfeed. They have all these things happening in those first days and weeks after giving birth. And so, yeah, also don't be afraid to say no to visitors or no to the help if you just want to kind of relax at home by yourself or with your partner or whoever. And then make sure you communicate if you feel like something is wrong or you don't feel well. This is definitely hard for me. I don't like talking about my feelings, and I also, as you can probably tell, I have a high pain tolerance. So I will sit there and deal with the pain for a while, and if I mention it to you, it's probably been bothering me for a long time because I've just held it in. That's just the type of person I am. But I've learned postpartum, like, you need to go ahead and communicate everything because there are people looking out for you, and postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, all those things are very real, and you want to look out for yourself. And then for partners, okay, a couple things. So, first of all, my partner spoke to a lot of his friends that had kids already, had babies recently, and they all would say things while I was pregnant, like, oh, guys are useless, like at this point. And then they'd also make comments about how their wives had had epidurals or needed epidurals. And I remember he came home once and was just like, yeah, I think you might need to reconsider. Like, you're going to need that epidural. Based on what I heard,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to need it. And it's like, okay, let's not do that. let's let's be supportive of her wishes. If you know that that's what she wants to do, if she wants to go in and have an unmedicated birth, then be supportive of that and respect that, and make sure that you're not projecting your fears or the fears of your friends onto her, because like she has enough that she's thinking about. So of course people are probably going to tell you those things, but you don't need to tell her that, and just see what happens, because everybody's situation is different. Also, this
Right.
whole guys are useless thing, I hate that. Like there's so much that guys can do to support you while you're pregnant or postpartum. um, a couple of things: ask her provider or support team questions if you go to some of those appointments. If you have a doula, that sort of thing, like get involved and genuinely be interested in learning about what she's going through and what she will experience, because no matter what, whether you've been married for years, you're dating or whatever, like being pregnant is very lonely and isolating experience, because it's all happening in your body. There's all these things that are happening. Your hormones are going crazy, and nobody can relate to that unless they're going through it, which luckily I did have a couple of friends that were, pregnant at the same time as me, which helped. But still, your partner doesn't understand. So do as much as you can to show that you are being supportive and trying to understand what she's going through. And then make sure you asking about how she's doing physically and emotionally. Like I said, there's a lot of big changes happening in pregnancy and postpartum with both of those. So pay attention to what she says, but also pay attention to what she's not saying. Like I said, this is my issue, was just not talking about it until it gets really bad. So pay attention to her mood throughout the day. If you notice any changes, figure out how you can support her. Let her know that you see her, and while you may not understand what she's going through, that you're here and you know it's real, and you're here to help and support her in any way that you can. Make sure she's eating. This is super important, again, in both pregnancy and postpartum. First trimester, I did not want to eat at all. I just felt so miserable. And he's really supportive by bringing me Ensure, because that was the only thing I felt comfortable eating. And now postpartum, I realize how important it is for us to eat, but also we feel like we don't have time to eat because we're feeding this baby,
Mhm.
pumping, changing, doing all the things, and it doesn't seem like there's enough hours in the day. So make sure she's eating 3 meals a day. Keep her water bottle full. Watch the baby so that she can shower every day or at least every other day and just kind of feel like a human again, and take initiative to do some of these things without her having to ask. I think that's the biggest thing, is because our brains are filled with everything we have going on, sleep schedules. You probably have seen, I've sent like a screenshot of the app
Mhm.
where I'm tracking every time we change her diaper, every time we feed her, every time I pump, like how we fed her, if we gave her a bottle or if I nursed her directly, how much she's sleeping. Like we're tracking all of that stuff, and it's running in our heads of when these things need to happen next. So give her one less thing to think about and just go ahead and take initiative to do some of these things without asking. Something else that has been really helpful that my partner did, at least, is like try to learn how to do these baby care things. Don't just leave it up to the woman. It drives me crazy when I hear about men that aren't helping change diapers or feed the baby. Like the least you could do is support her in that, changing the diapers, because I know feeding
Absolutely.
most of the time that falls on her. So come on. There's something called weaponized incompetence, which is where people, mainly guys, pretend that they can't do something because they just don't want to. So don't be that guy
Yeah.
and help her out. If you want extra bonus points, wake up with her in the middle of the night for any of those late night feeds and changes. Even if you don't do anything, like if she's feeding the baby, just being up with her is going to make her feel so supported and like she's not alone. Also, she will resent you and feel very jealous if you're getting a full night's sleep. Take it from me.
Jeez, that sounds very personal.
If you're getting a full night's sleep and she's waking up multiple times throughout the night, yeah, she's gonna feel some type of way about that. So just, be up with her and support her. And even better, if you can handle the diaper changes while she's handling all the feeds or pumping at night,
Mhm.
that'll be helpful. Something I am grateful for: let her sleep during the day. And I used to never take naps, but obviously with a baby being up late, now my body can sleep any time of day. And so, if possible, let her take a nap. My partner has allowed me to sleep for like 4 hours plus sometimes. And I'm like, whoa, you let me sleep that long? But clearly I needed it because somehow my body slept for 4 hours in the middle of the day. I don't know. So yeah, let her sleep during the day, and if possible, let her sleep through the night at least once a week. Like if she's pumping, you have bottles, you're able to feed the baby throughout the night and do the changes. Like give her a break. And then something I'm looking forward to that I also wanted to say here is treat her to get her nails done or do a postpartum massage or something to get out of the
Mm-hmm.
house. I remember my first trip out of the house, I went to Best Buy to do a return, but it was just like so nice to be out of the house for a second. Um, and I honestly haven't been anywhere else since, now that I think of it. Oh, wait, I did go to Trader Joe's, which is also a great place to go. But yeah, just give her a break or a chance to get out of the house and feel a little bit normal because we're stuck at home, especially because in a lot of cases, maternity leave is much longer than paternity leave. So we're home longer. All we're interacting with is this baby all day. We're having like little to no adult interaction. So just getting out, seeing other people, it does wonders for our mental health. And then something
Yeah.
else that is helpful is to help wash and sterilize bottles and pump parts and that sort of thing because we are doing that multiple times a day and it is a lot. So helping out with that. And then just tell her that you're proud of her. Make sure she feels appreciated because again, this is it's a crazy time. It's like very exciting but also overwhelming. You're overstimulated. Like I said, it's very isolating at the same time because you have this new baby, you don't want a ton of people around, so you're not having a ton of visitors most likely. So, yeah, be as supportive as you can be. And then
Mm-hmm.
similarly for friends and family, just recognize that this person just went through a very life-changing event, and as exciting as it is to see the baby, and I know everyone's very excited to see babies, wait for them to invite you over and like be patient with them until they're ready for that because you don't know like emotionally how everybody's doing with this, like coping with this change, especially if they're going to like a family of 3, like this is their first time. You know, if they have another kid, they might be, they're kind of used to it potentially. I don't know what that's like, but I know for us, it's like such a big transition to all of a sudden have this little one to take care of and not just be the two of you anymore. So let
Mm-hmm.
them have that moment for a little bit and then make sure that you check on mom first and then the baby because everyone, I won't say everyone, but a lot of people, they forget about the mom through pregnancy and postpartum. Everyone just gets so excited about the baby and they kind of forget about the mom, but like she's going through so much and she will be very appreciative of anyone who genuinely asks like how she's doing physically, emotionally, and like how things are going with the baby. But like ask that after you check on how she's doing. And then if you do come over or speak to her, ask what you can do to help. Um, Something that would be really helpful for, at least in my case, that I would tell people is like bring us food because we're not eating. We don't have time to cook or go grocery shopping, that sort of thing. So food, snacks, sending gift cards, help with household chores if you can, or even better, like send them some money to have someone come clean a certain room or the whole house if you can. Just because that's something that they're not able to focus on anymore. And for some people like me, having a dirty house is actually stressful and it just adds to it. So instead
Right.
of having time to take care of the baby, then I find myself trying to vacuum while also holding my baby and feeding and doing all this other stuff. It's just, yeah,
Too much.
too much. Like take the load off. It probably sounds like, oh my God, I don't want to do all these things. Like you do it yourself. But I'm telling you, when you have a newborn, these things, it takes a load off, like a mental load off and
Mm-hmm.
gives them something else to like not have to worry about. Other than that, I've also seen where people have said like, okay, obviously make sure you wash your hands before holding their baby. Respect their wishes to not kiss the baby. We have COVID, we have RSV, we have all these things going on. Some people don't even want you to hold their baby at all. So like, don't take any of these things personally. That mom is probably trying to just look out for her new kid. There's also just so much going on. And then there's also a lot of conditions that happen potentially or can happen postpartum. So be mindful of them and don't take anything personally because you don't know what's going on with that mom.
Mm-hmm.
I know there was this, you probably heard of the mom that just killed her kids a few days ago or last week.
Yes.
And she was getting the help that she asked for. It just wasn't all the help that she needed, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So just be nice to
So
moms.
sad.
A couple of other statistics I did look up because I didn't even know this. So there's something called postpartum rage. Have you heard of that?
No.
I had never heard of that, but let me tell you, I definitely experienced it. And 1 in 3 women suffer from postpartum rage. 1 in 3. Like, that's so common.
Wow.
Why are we
Yeah.
not talking about that? All you hear about is postpartum depression, which of course is
Right.
important. 1 in 10 suffer from postpartum depression, but 1 in 7 suffer from postpartum anxiety. So, like, why are we
Mm.
not talking about those even more? Postpartum
Right.
anxiety, postpartum rage, I had never heard of. And then I think the woman that, just had that very unfortunate situation happen in their family, she is suspected to have been experiencing postpartum psychosis, which happens for
Mm.
1 in 500 women. So, long story short, be nice to new moms, and not just in the couple weeks after they give birth. I think her newborn was 8 months old or something, or her
Mm-hmm.
baby was 8 months old. I think this is something that lasts for a while. Obviously, I'm only a few weeks into it, but I could definitely see how these symptoms come up and how they present themselves and they sneak up on you. And also, it doesn't seem like there's a lot that is done for these moms initially when it's first happening. We fill out a survey at the doctor's office. Even when I take the baby to her pediatrician appointments, they'll ask, like, in the past 7 days, how often did you feel helpless? And it's like, okay, I can give you a rating out of however many, 1 through 7 or
Right.
whatever the scale is, but like, what's actually going to happen after that? And also, like, what is this really going to do?
Right.
So the best thing is for our family, friends to support us in this. And trust me, she will definitely remember who's been supportive during this time, and it will mean a lot to her. She'll appreciate it a lot. And she'll also remember anybody that was like not supportive, like actively just not with what her wishes were. So yeah, there's been people that have reached out to me that have been super supportive and checking on me specifically and asking like how I'm doing mentally and emotionally, and I appreciate that so much. So I would say extend that to other people that are pregnant. I know when my friends have their babies, I'm going to be checking on them a lot because it is intense. I had no idea it was like this, but I have a
It
whole new
is. And
perspective
it's still
now.
so crazy to think that you're a mom.
Yeah.
It's like,
I
what?
am a mother. Bitch, I'm a mother. Nicki. Wait, who is that? I was about to say Nicki Minaj. Who is it? It's Cardi B, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So funny.
So it is. It is wild, but she's the cutest thing ever. And yeah, I know people will also ask like what her name is, any details about her. And personally, I'm just not going to be sharing any of that online. Crazy people out here in the world. And I'm just going to respect her privacy. So yeah, for now, she's baby J, but we're really excited to have her here in the world. She's precious. She's such a good baby. And yeah, I'm about to go feed her now because I've been away for a while. Well, yeah, thank you so much for being on the podcast, joining me for this very
Yes.
special episode.
It was
Was
fun.
there anything else that we missed that you wanted to mention or go over?
I don't think so. That was a lot of great postpartum advice you gave.
Thanks. Yeah, I've
I
learned a
really
lot
like
in this
that.
few weeks. And
Yeah.
I'm sure I'll learn more over time and I'll be glad to share, but those are some big takeaways so far.
Yeah. Yeah, that was good. I like that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And if you have any questions after you listen to this episode, feel free to hit me up in the DMs at First Hustle Then Brunch, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the First Hustle Then Brunch podcast. If you enjoyed this episode or learned something new, I'd love if you subscribed and left us a review. Another way to support the podcast is to take a screenshot of this episode and share it on your Instagram story. Tag me at First Hustle Then Brunch so I can repost it. Thank you so much for supporting the show, and I'll see you in the next episode.